Hey, check 1 2 1 2. Good morning, everybody. Day number two. All right, 7th annual Renewable and Sustainability Conference right here, Native Learning Center, Seminole Tribe of Florida. Let's give them a round of applause. Let them hear ya. To my crew. Owista, she's out there. Jasmine right here. Brooke over here. My main man, Kyle outside. Mata outside. Georgette outside. I think Hayden outside. I think I'm saying them all right. Let's give them a round of applause. Wave at everybody, Brooke. Wave at everybody. Okay. Well, good morning. Thank you all for being here on time. Even though I had to remind you all, thank you all for being here on time this morning. Everybody turn to someone and say, good morning, I'm glad you're here. Hurry, good morning, I'm glad you're here. Hey, and you know, let's, and just do one more thing, man. Tell someone right now, say, pray for someone today. Say that, pray for someone today. Be blessed, say that, pray for someone, be blessed. Say, Creator don't owe you anything, so be blessed. That's right, okay. Well, I'm very, very grateful this morning to introduce not only, a professional, y'all call him Mr. Pendleton. I call him Earl the Pearl Pendleton, This gentleman right here, I've had the privilege to know his whole family, and his best friend, Don, is in attendance today. I know all his boys ever since they were little bitty guys, and now I knew Earl and Don before they were grandparents. Now they're just all kind of grandparents now. Got grandparents, got grandkids everywhere. But I'm very grateful to call upon him, and he'll give you some time for Q&As at the very end. I want to make sure I got his name right. And if you're joining us online, let's give everybody joining online. Let's give them a round of applause. Let them hear you. Yes. All right. And if you have to, Earl, you go overtime. If we gave you 45 minutes, you take that 45 minutes, okay? We're going to push through again today, but before we do, man, I just want to give a moment of silence for anybody that's on your heart, anybody that you're dealing with back home that's on your heart. I'm going to give it up to our residential MMIP, just anything that, that we're dealing with, any loved one, whatever it may be, that may be sick, ill, or whatever, followed by a short prayer. You're more than welcome to pray how you pray, okay? But let's go ahead and just have this moment here. Creator God, Heavenly Father, we come to you this morning. We just thank you for this 7th annual conference here. We thank you for the Native Learning Center. We thank you for the Seminole Tribe of Florida. And we just want to thank you for all the representation in this room, the tribes and the organizations, the foundations, the corporations, the sponsors, donors, recipients, grantees, grantors, whatever it may be. Creator God, Heavenly Father, we thank you for our soundboard over here, for making this on point here. Creator God, Heavenly Father, thank you for this moment, this opportunity, Creator God, Heavenly Father. We ask you to be with all the presenters today. Be with the good energy in this room, and just be with us as we keep this good energy in this room. This morning, we ask you for special prayers for Earl as he's about to present here, Creator God, Heavenly Father. Don't mean to be personal or selfish, Creator God, Heavenly Father, but thank you for making me indigenous, and thank you for putting me on this platform. You're precious to me, pray. Amen. All right, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage. He comes to us from the Lower Sioux Indian community. He's the Director of Industrial Hemp Operations. Give it up for the one and only Mr. Earl the Pearl Pendleton. Let him hear ya. Oh, man, he was supposed to have some background music on that one.
Wow, I don't get very many introductions like that. Thank you, Chance. And thank you to the Native Learning Center for bringing me here today. Thank you all for being here. I guess we'll get right into the slideshow. I want to, not sure where I'm, all right, there we go. Whoa, I think we go back one. I need my notes, sorry. Yeah, just a little background. I'm Earl Pendleton from the Lower Sioux Indian community up in Morton, Minnesota, southwest Minnesota. We're a really small tribe on a kind of a postage stamp of a reservation, only 2,000 acres in total, 1,100 total members. And we're small, but we got big ideas up there, and we're trying to share them with the rest of you and try to get this thing going. We're kind of self-contained with what we do with hemp, but I think this is an idea that could be developed throughout Indian country. So glad to be here, and I'll get through these slides with you. So before I get into what we do and how we do it, I just want to get a little background of why we do what we do. There's a housing shortage at Lower Sioux. When I started on the tribal council back in 2011, it was about 50 homes short, and now that 15 years later, it's well over 100. So it's not going anywhere, and 53% of our population is under 25 years old. So we're going to see even more of a need for housing development, which is kind of where this all began. And circulating our grant funds in our community has always been, we've been really successful, as I'm sure as other tribes are, of receiving grant funding and developing housing in our community. But there's always been kind of a disconnect there with, we get the funding, we contract, we bid it out to local contractors, and they do the work, and we get that housing we need, but those funds kind of leave the community. So what we do is partially about using hemp to build with, but we want to bid out projects that are sustainable, and we have the capability to do it, and we're really the only ones in the state right now that build this way. So we can keep those funds circulating within our community. That's kind of our goal. And what we've been seeing over the years is a lot of substandard housing, a lot of contractors that try to make up time and labor and just kind of rush through things, and we have a lot of issues with how they're built. So we started with an idea of addressing our housing shortage, but also addressing the shortfalls of what we actually receive. So before we get going, I just wanted to kind of go over, the type of construction materials that are in not only our housing, but housing all over the country. And, right here we have like 70% of gases that are used and the environmental impact that they have. But a lot of our members in our community don't have the funds to put in sophisticated air handling systems. So it's always going to be an issue whether we put in sophisticated equipment, and we want to do this more naturally. So here we have the chemicals that are in our building products. There's over 85,000 chemicals in the building products we use. And I was going to bring up, there's some slides that are missing. I'm sorry, this is a presentation for a different funding opportunity, but we're going to try to work through it. So here we have 80,000 chemicals. Only 250 have been tested, and of those, 5 have been regulated and banned. What we have with these chemicals is an unknown, right? There's a slide that I usually like to put out of a bag of Doritos, right? Just a simple bag of Doritos, but at least on that bag of Doritos, you can turn it around and see its ingredients list, and you can choose to consume yellow number 40 or not. It's your choice, but the building industry doesn't have that same standard. They are free to build and put in our homes, and we have no idea what's in those products they develop. So why hemp? Why do we use hemp? Hemp is, as an agricultural product, it's a soil remediator. It has a vast root system, a deep tap root that doesn't take moisture from the topsoil, so it's always going to be keeping from erosion and keeping those issues away from, and with the pesticides and herbicides that are used in conventional crops, especially in Minnesota, corn and soybeans, we don't use any of those. So hemp is a great soil remediator. It grows fast, it grows tall, so there's a lot of carbon sequestration, one of the most carbon sequestering plants that are available to grow. So hemp as a carbon sequester is one of the best, and that's why we like to promote that growth of hemp. We know what happens when in Minnesota, especially with the tiling of our fields, and all that sediment goes into the Minnesota River. There's another slide that I have in a different presentation, sorry, that what kind of shows where that confluence with the Minnesota River and the Mississippi River, and how that all flows down to the Gulf of Mexico and ends up in the, it turns into like a dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico. I don't know, Gulf of America, whatever it is now. But yeah, so that's an issue I think that Minnesota has that kind of brings an issue throughout the whole country, is that those chemicals that they use for these crops are killing the environment, the land. It's infecting our water supply. It's getting down into the ocean. So all the way through its course, it's just destructive. So we want to grow something that's better for the environment and better for our own needs. And you know, as a Native people, I think, you know, natural protectors of the environment. So I think it makes sense for us to kind of lead this new effort with how we farm and what we use to produce these crops. I think it's important for us to show our next generations too that there's a better way to farm, and regenerative farming is another avenue that we're exploring. We're kind of new into this. Lower Sioux has never farmed anything in our 80-year existence, so the hemp crop is our first crop that we ever grew. And you know, it's an important milestone, I think, for us. But yeah, we're definitely playing catch up with all the other farmers, and yeah, we're learning as we go. Oh, sorry, I'm a little bit. So hemp, why hemp? So hemp's great, right? But why do we build with it? And a lot of it is for the environmental purposes, but just as important, though, I think, is what these products that we're surrounded by in our homes are doing. Is have a healthier alternative to the conventional building products. But that's not just the only reason why you should do this. I mean, when you're going to threaten a billion-dollar industry like the petrochemical industry, it has to outperform them. It can't just be an equivalent. So that's what we're really focusing on is how do we compete with the petrochemical industry when. So if this is a little bit more about our hemp that we produce in our region. That in Minnesota obviously is very farm and ag oriented. We have 30 million acres within our 1 million acres within our 30-mile radius. So if we just planted 1% of those 30 of that 1 million, we'd have 10,000 acres, and you know that could supply a processing facility that can do 10 ton per hour of hemp processing. So we hopefully we can get that capability up there. Right now we have a facility and a system that can process half a 2,500 acres in a year. So we're a little bit far off. We want to obviously expand on that, but we're looking to find that funding to get us up to that 10,000 acres. So the benefits of a hempcrete home. I just wanted to get into why we do it and what we do it for. So 50 to 80% energy savings, that's obviously based off of where you live. In Minnesota, we live in a very extreme climate where heating and cooling, obviously cooling would be the focus down here, but we have a lot of polar vortex was what was over there last week. So we can really see up to that 80% energy savings because of the thermal mass of a hempcrete building. It's a 12-inch thick wall. It's a monolithic wall, so it's all hemp all the way through. There's no wall cavity that the conventional building products have. So what we do is we replace the vinyl siding or whatever it is on the outside, the OSB, the vapor barrier, the bat insulation, the fiberglass insulation, and the drywall. And we replace that with a simple mixture of hemp, lime, and water. And it's low tech. I know there's a lot of ways to get to net zero building with solar and things like that, but that's a really sophisticated technology that, as our tribe is, we're happy for our kids to come out and just to get graduated from high school. It's been an issue throughout our history, so we really don't have a lot of science behind us, but this is a really low tech opportunity and for our kids to get into this type of work without having to have a real sophisticated background in science. So what some of the benefits of the hempcrete home is it's fireproof, and I should probably state that the mixture is hemp and lime. So hemp and lime have their own kind of roles to play in this. Lime is nothing can eat lime, so that we don't have any kind of bugs or any mice issues with the lime. With the lime, lime can't start on fire, so it's fireproof, and it's non-toxic and non-fungal, so there's no mold that develops on lime. So that's not hemp. Obviously, when you combine hemp with lime and water, it creates a chemical reaction that turns each of those pieces of hemp into lime, basically. So we'd have a fire, pest, and mold-resistant house. The negative carbon footprint, that's the carbon sequestered when we grow hemp. There's a carbon that's absorbed throughout the life of the home. Carbon or lime wants to always become limestone again, so it's always absorbing carbon out of the atmosphere for the life of the home, and it will petrify over time. So that's where we get the long the lifespan of a hempcrete home can be hundreds of years. There's a home in Japan that's 400 years old, built out of hemp and lime. So we know there's examples out there. Hempcrete was discovered in France in the mid-1980s. There's a bridge there that was built in the 6th century, so a 1,600-year-old bridge that they're wondering why it was still there. How can they still be using it? What was this made out of? They broke down the ingredients or what was in that mortar, and it was hemp and lime. So that's kind of where it all began. It's been a developed industry in Europe for the last 30 years. It's really slow. It doesn't really exist here yet in the U.S., so it's something that we're kind of in the forefront, but we're on the bleeding edge in a lot of these things where there's a lot of hemp companies that have come and gone. It's just a really hard industry to get into. We're competing with some of the biggest players in the game, so it's always going to be tough to stay afloat. But we had a really simple idea at Lower Sioux. It was build better houses, build healthier houses for our members, develop a workforce that could give them jobs other than the casino. We all know the casino jobs. I kind of grew up there and worked a lot of jobs in the casino. It's customer service, and sometimes you see people at their worst times. It can really wear you out, and it can burn you out. And so there's a lot of opportunity to develop the trades in our community with what we do with hemp. Plumbing, the electrical side, the site work, the carpentry. These are all things that community members in the past have worked in, but it's always been an outside contractor or company that hires them and not the actual tribe. So what we're doing now is we're bringing in a master carpenter, and we're have plans to, well, a lot of these things, it's kind of a tough day, really, because some of the grants that we were just awarded with climate pollution reduction grant money is kind of, I just got an email saying that a lot of that money might be frozen. So it's kind of a tough day to to talk about things that we had big plans to do when the new administration maybe not fund those things. But our plan will be, regardless, that we'll keep building with hemp, and we'll keep developing those trades that we began years ago. So we're going to keep fighting. We'll see how that all turns out. But so we have a healthier living environment. So hemp in this equation, I talked about lime. It's mold, fire, pest resistant. It petrifies, so it lasts a long time. But the hemp's role in this whole thing is the cellular structure of hemp means there's a lot of air pockets within that. It's a really it's a lightweight material that, as an insulator, can provide a thermal mass with the wall. So that there's a lot of it takes a long time for a hempcrete interior to feel the outside temperatures as they change outside. It takes a long time to transfer into the interior of a hempcrete home, and as hemp is just like any other plant. So hemp isn't the only plant you can build with, but it does the same thing. It's hygroscopic, so moisture can move throughout the fabric of the home. That can be released back into the interior when it's dry. If it's too humid inside of the house, it can be pulled out of the interior and released back into the outdoor air. So what we have is a home that maintains optimal humidity throughout the year. And that's so when I talk to builders around the world, they don't use furnaces, and they build them in Canada. They don't have central air conditioners. They build them in India. So how it works in the U.S. is I don't know a lot about how optimal hemp will be, but I know if you can build them in Canada without a furnace and India without central air, I think most of the U.S. would be able to do the same thing. And when I speak about hemp and hempcrete in Minnesota, people will always ask, "Well, wait a minute, you can't have a house without a furnace." And that's always been something that early on I had to figure this out for myself too. I was a skeptic throughout it all, but I should point out that a house that a tiny home that we built last year. And this was just about a week and a half ago. It was 14 below with a 25 below wind chill, and we haven't even insulated the foundation or the floor yet, and we have just baseboard heaters in there, and we don't even have them turned on. And the only thing that we have in there is a tiny solar panel, which I should point out was built up north, Red Lake, I believe, reservation, who has Eighth Fire Solar. They installed a solar panel that's just a 12 volt battery. That's the only thing running that, and it's supposed to be a supplement to your primary heating source, but it's all we had in there, and the temperature only got to 57 degrees. So in context, our own house, which has been there 30 years, it's just conventional materials. The furnace was running, everything was on. 2 of our pipes froze in that same night. So I know, just off that alone, that this has potential. That's a real world kind of test that we can put a lot of fancy sensors and equipment in there to figure these things out, but that tells me that what we're doing is we're on the right track. And this is the type of home that can reduce your monthly heating and cooling costs, give you a perfect, humidity throughout the year. And I've talked to people around the country. There's not a lot of homes really in the country that are hempcrete, but they say there's a different feel to it. It feels like their kids don't get sick like the rest, all the other kids at school. They feel more healthy, productive. I don't know if that's a placebo effect or if that's real, but I really tend to believe that the claims of hempcrete, where it's always pulling toxins out of the indoor air. And I said, we're living in that plastic bubble right now, and without a sophisticated air handling system, it's just going to keep circulating in the home. whereas the hempcrete will always be pulling toxins and lock them away into the fabric of the wall. It makes sense that they use hemp in spill zones, radiation in Chernobyl. They built hemp because it pulls that stuff, the toxin out of the ground, and it just locks it away in its fibers. So hemp has a big role to play. Obviously, lime, we know what lime can do. There's science behind that, but hemp is a plant, and it will always be regulating its indoor air, and so they both play a role, and together I think they're a great team. But another great thing about hempcrete is we encapsulate the frame. It's insulation, so it's not structural. So we have timber frames, and we encapsulate that frame within the hempcrete wall. So it's always going to protect that frame, prevents dry rot, prevents the interior from wearing down. And what we see in a lot of our homes in Lower Sioux is that after 30 years, they seem to be already breaking down and foundationally and structurally. So something happened with the building industry, I think, over the last 70 years. I grew up in a home that was, my dad bought it and moved it to the Lower Sioux in 1980, and it was 80 years old then. So, it's probably 120 years old, and my niece is still living in that house. So what they did back 100 years ago, how they built, they let the house breathe a little better. They didn't have drywall and vapor barriers. So I think a lot of the issues now is that we're trapping a lot of the moisture that we create as occupants when we're washing, breathing, cleaning. We're creating moisture, and that moisture has to go somewhere. By keeping moisture out with the vapor barrier, you're also keeping moisture in. So I think there's a lot of issues with mold and how that sits on a dry wall, and it creates a really optimal environment for black mold. What a hemp home will do is always absorb that moisture into the wall, so it doesn't sit on the hempcrete wall. And what we do with the hempcrete right now is we finish it with lime plaster. Lime is a breathable material just like hemp, so what we have is a vapor open system and not a closed off plastic bubble that the conventional construction has right now. It's always breathing. It needs to breathe. We can't put anything on the outside of it that prevents that from breathing. So it's always pulling moisture out of the indoor air and not letting it sit on the walls and develop mold. And also, because it's hemp and it's lime, water of course, but it's all natural ingredients. It'll never see a landfill. It's 100% recyclable. If we had to tear out a wall, we can just ground it up, put it right back into our next hempcrete mix, or just spread it out over a field as an amendment. So it'll never see a landfill. These are things that I think the construction industry struggles with right now. I think some of the latest figures is half of all landfill use is construction materials. And as an industry, it's 3 to 4% of GDP, but 42% of carbon emissions. So the construction industry, if there's ever going to be a solution to the climate crisis, it's going to have to play a major role. So with hemp, we're obviously trying to positively impact the environment, diversify our incomes, create meaningful, well-paid jobs, build healthy homes for our community. And these are all great things, but I really sell hempcrete with its performance. It outperforms conventional materials on basically every metric. So in our housing department, we see a lot of issues with mold in our community, and we're trying to address real world issues with like your monthly heating and cooling bill, how long the home will last, and to give someone peace of mind that this house will be there, past their lifetime and generations to come. So I think we really sell hempcrete on its performance. It can have a huge impact on the environment and the substitution for the products and materials that are in conventional building, but really it beats them in performance. And that's really where we want to kind of sell hempcrete. Seed to sovereignty, we talk about this in Lower Sioux. To have control of your housing industry and your housing development is a really key for what we do at Lower Sioux. It's having control over the funding that comes in, but also to keep circulating that money throughout the community with different jobs in the green industry. We want to promote this to our younger generation that there's somewhere here at the Lower Sioux for you to come back and be designers and architects and have professional jobs that, a lot of the times some of our best students, they graduate college, but there's really nothing there but casino jobs. And so they go outside of the community. Some of them leave, they don't come back. They take that kind of knowledge and bring it somewhere else. But this is a way, I think, for them to have a role in the fight against climate change and the climate crisis, and to bring all that knowledge back to the community and really make us thrive. But also just having occupations and jobs in the building sector that we never really had before. The Lower Sioux has a successful casino, but we live in a really ag-rich state. So, even though we're remotely located, we have a really successful casino because of all the money that flows around us in the ag industry. And right now, I think there's a place at the table there with corn and soybeans and sugar beets that the state of Minnesota doesn't see. Hemp is just not as for building. It has two major parts of the plant, and I should probably talk a little bit about hemp itself. When we process the hemp plant, there's the grain that grows and the seed that grows at the top of the plant that we cut off with a combine, and then we can sell that grain for food products that it's a complete nutrient. So it really helps with processed foods and to replace some of the ingredients in processed foods. But I think the big potential with hemp grain will be with animal feed. Right now, you could go to Walmart and buy a bag of hemp seeds, and that's fine, and it's legal to do, but it's illegal to feed it to an animal. And so there's a disconnect there. I think it's just a matter of time before that happens, and they have started. They just approved it for laying hens last year. So we have a cattle farmer that is our farmer here in the Lower Sioux, and his cattle don't want the corn because he introduced them to hemp seed, and they just want hemp now. So I think there's it's not just that it's healthy, but it also tastes good, and the animals want it. So I think that'll be an expanding market that will really develop a big market for the grain. But the two major components of the plant is that grain, that seed, and the fiber. So when we take off the top, when we process the grain with a combine, there's a stalk left over, and that stalk consists of the central core of the stalk, which is the hurd, which I'm talking about. That's what we use for the building side. But the fiber that surrounds that is some of the strongest fibers in the plant world, and there's 20,000 uses of hemp. Most of them are with fiber. That's the textile industry. That's hemp clothing. That's bioplastics. There's endless applications for hemp fiber, but these are all developing markets yet. I talk about using the hemp hurd as construction material, but before that it was just animal bedding. So what we're using is kind of the waste product of the plant and recycling of a product that normally would just kind of be thrown out. So hemp construction as a hemp processor, there's a lot of ways to bring down our cost of building by selling the other parts of the plant. And we're not using the whole plant. You know, that would probably be a lot more cost to building if we had to use the entire plant, but we're only using the inner core of that plant. So I think we have a real opportunity to, as those markets develop, that's why I say we're kind of on the bleeding edge. We are processing hemp right now, but we have no buyers for that fiber yet. It's still a chicken and the egg scenario with how that works. Farmers can't grow hemp if there's no processors, and processors really can't put in the capital to invest in $1 million facilities if there's no one growing hemp. So something has to happen there. All the car manufacturers in Germany, BMW, Mercedes, Volvo, they all use hemp in their interiors finishes. And Ford and GM ever decided to do that, there would be a huge demand for hemp fiber. But without any domestic supply, they really can't get into that. So I think there's a lot of room to grow in the hemp markets, but our idea was keep it small, not have to rely on who we're going to buy hemp from, and that's why we wanted to be vertically integrated, where we can grow it, process it, build with it. We don't really rely on that kind of glut in the market for hemp, and the real costs with hemp, building with hemp are usually down to importing it from Europe. There's some processors in Canada, but the cost to import hemp is what drives it above conventional and kind of out of the price range for affordable housing. As we have hemp in our own community, we can see building costs relatively the same as conventional right now. I think we built well under the conventional house. That we had 2 houses that we built out of hemp. One was a general contractor and one was our own contractor that built it. And I think we really came in about 20% under the general contractor's costs. So that's kind of about the local agriculture and economy, the land benefits. I kind of got stuck. I think my slides. Oh, here we go. We have some technical difficulties, but yeah, I think we're about to the end of this presentation, but I just wanted to, as a, kind of in summary, I think what we see in Minnesota is probably what a lot of tribes are seeing the same thing is, the casino industry is under, I think, threat of, sports betting, which we've seen all around us and will eventually be passed in Minnesota. It's going to take a little bit of a bite out of our casino revenues. Oh, we're back. But iGaming is another thing that I think is on the horizon. And I think we've seen with the malls, where we used to go buy our clothes, that if, they have an option to game on their phones, that it's going to definitely have some type of impact on brick and mortar casinos. And, with powerful algorithms and artificial intelligence, always pulling people towards their phones. And, I think gaming is definitely under a threat. And for us at Lower Sioux, it's time that we maybe look to pivot into something else. And here's an industry that's in its infancy, and there's not a lot of those in this country that I think have the potential for what hemp can be. And just that's on a kind of a macro level, but what we do is just like try to stay self-contained. We only have 500 acres of tillable land, so we'll never be able to supply many communities outside of our own with hempcrete and hemp construction materials. So it's kind of just been something where if I could build 10 houses a year, I'd be satisfied, and we'd keep this little microeconomy going within our own community. But I think there's a real opportunity with hemp processing, especially in Minnesota, where if hemp does start to thrive, it will be Minnesota that kind of is leading the way with hemp production. So I think there's a real opportunity for hemp processing to be that supplier to Ford and GM and 3M when they start with the microplastics, and to send out a product. And I wanted to get into what we've done for ourselves at the Lower Sioux. We've built 4 houses out of hemp now. We're the only 4 in Minnesota, probably the only 4 in the Midwest, but it's a honorable, we're proud of that distinction, but I think what I'm trying to do is expand that. I want to see tribes building these all throughout the country. And we've done it with different methods. There's a cast-in-place method where we pour it wet on site, and we make walls. Here's kind of where we've gone through the years. It's been a slow developing enterprise, but here's where it started. We had a hemp shed that we built. That was about 45 years ago. That's kind of where we started. That's now it's at the powwow. It's for our elders now to have a stand at the powwow, but that's kind of a practice shed that we built. There's our facility. It's kind of primitive. It's got a hammer mill, a shaker table, and an air classifier. We size it in that hammer mill, chops up the herd. We shake it through that table. It shakes out the fiber and separates that herd, and we blow it up in the air, and that pulls that lighter fiber from the top and the heavier herd pieces. And herd is just like a wood chip. That's what it looks like. There's the herd that we produce for the building. That's Joey, our farmer, Don's nephew, I should add. But so here's the 4-bedroom home. That's made out of hemp, and it now has a lime plaster finish on the outside, so it's breathable all the way throughout. I think someone told me at a different conference that you're never an expert until you failed in every way possible. So we do have some issues sometimes when we have failed. We tried to build that or pour that in the middle of November when it was too cold. It didn't have time to cure, so we did have some mold issues that we remediated, though. Here's the panel walls. So that's kind of the commercial product that we want to get to, is when we get into our facility now that we just opened in September, we want to make wall panels, blocks for retrofits, and so we can have an actual product that we can ship to other communities. And that was pre-cured wall panels, so they come out. It's easier to do things in a controlled environment inside of our factory, where we can pour these walls and let them cure naturally and not have to do that on site. So it's definitely the way we want to go. And that's that house that was in the polar vortex and managed to stay above 50 degrees without any kind of heating source. So that's kind of where we want to be. That's just the mixer that we use. Here's a spray application that we implemented into our first retrofit. So you can build new houses with hempcrete, but you can also retrofit the ones that are already there. You tear off all the junk down to the studs, and we fill it back in with hempcrete. We won the best home. That's a pretty honorable distinction. Here's the first house we built. It's a duplex. You can see it's got vinyl siding on it. It's a terrible product, but we wanted to show community members who were concerned about what these houses would look like. They always ask, well, what's it going to look like? Thought it was going to be a Hobbit house or something from Gilligan's Island. But, we wanted to show you can put whatever you want on the outside of it. It can look like all the other houses in the community. doesn't have to look different. And that's a lime plaster finish on the interior wall too. Field day, so we opened our facility in September, as I said. Now we have 3 years of hemp bales. We probably have 300 bales of hemp now that we have to get through. And that's going to be our task over the winter, is get all those bales processed so we're ready to build in the spring and summer. Green Buffalo, this is a short film Patagonia did on what we're doing. It doesn't tell a lot about hempcrete. It's just kind of more of a story about our, why we're doing it. So if you wanted to check that out, that'd be cool. Here's a picture. Yeah, so in the end, we're trying to build healthier homes. That's really what it boils down to. There's a lot of great things about hempcrete, but I think the best aspect of hempcrete can be it's just healthier. You're not surrounded by those chemicals that are floating around off-gassing everywhere, throughout your home. It's always pulling that stuff out. It can create a healthier living environment, and in the end, that's what we want for our members. It's just be healthier, more productive, and maybe save them some money. Yeah, so we're talking about, I think I kind of lost track here, but yeah, we're just trying to circulate our money that we've already been bringing in to develop housing and not let it float out to the local contractors. We're just trying to stay self-contained. Environmental impact is always great. Never see a landfill. That's a big deal, I think, for us. And I think I lost it again, but I think that's pretty much it. But I thank you guys for your time today, and hopefully we'll see some hempcrete homes in Florida or everywhere around the Indian country. So I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Earl Pendleton, right here. Round of applause.
Sure, yep.